I've been a career paramedic, but this happened when I'd only been one for about 5 years. This has never left me to this day, and I shit you not, it happened exactly like this. I was driving home on a rural highway one rainy afternoon. It was really pouring, and traffic had slowed down to about 50 miles per hour. I was following two vehicles, and we rounded a bend in the road as a small sports car on the opposite side crossed the center line and hit the small SUV that was leading the three of us vehicles on the side of the road. I immediately pulled over and called 911. It was a bad one. I got out to check on everyone. There was wailing coming from the SUV on the side of the road. That's always a good thing because people are breathing. So I went into the field past the ditch to check on the sports car. There were two young guys in the car. The force of the impact had driven the engine to where the front passenger seat would be. The passenger seat was buckled, his crumpled hand grabbing the oh shit handle overhead. The entire section of the car was shoved into the back seat area. The back of the car had peeled away, and so had the passenger's top of his head, his jawbone gutted out, raw and jagged. He was clearly deceased, but I felt for a pulse anyways, all while listening to the gasping, ragged, dragging breaths of the driver. No pulse on the passenger. I tried to figure out how to deal with the driver, but there was nothing I could do. The car had literally wrapped around him, and it would take an extraction team to get him out. Listening to his dying breath, I apologized out loud to him that I couldn't do more and told him I was sorry to leave him, but others needed my help too. In my heart, I knew he'd never make it, so I went to render aid where it was needed. I did what I could for the family in the SUV. Emergency medical personnel and fire services got to the scene and took over. The entire family had injuries, but all survived. The mother had permanent brain damage and lost an eye, but the whole day, those two guys in the red sports car stayed in my mind. That night, I was home alone and getting ready for bed with just the bedside lamp on. Then I heard something in the hallway. It got louder as it came down the dark hallway toward my open door. It was like a thump, drag, thump, drag. I absolutely froze. A broken hand curled around the frame of my doorway, and then that kid from the passenger seat was standing there, busted up just like he was in the car. I'm totally serious. He looked at me, and I can't recall the exact words of what he said, but it was something along the lines of, "Hey, my friend wants you to know he understands. He wants you to know he's okay. We both are. Thanks for trying." He stood there for a few more seconds, just looking at me, and then he stepped back into the shadows, let go of the door frame, and I listened to him drag back down the hallway into nothing. I turned on every damn light I could. I slept with the lights on for 2 full weeks. I clipped out their death notices from the paper later that week. Turns out they were both high school seniors on their way home from a wrestling tournament. Their car hydroplaned from what the investigation determined. I'd never have recognized the blonde-haired kid if he had come to me in his healthy, unwrecked self. It freaked me the hell out that he came to me busted up. I still have the newspaper clippings. I'll never forget them, nor the ghostly visit. Anyway, that's my experience. I've seen a lot of shit in my 29-year career, but nothing quite like that before nor since. Before we move on to the next story, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever experienced something similar? If so, please share your experience in the comments section. I read all your comments and try to reply to everyone. Additionally, I will feature some of your experiences in my next videos. Story 2. First-year firefighter experience. I've been a firefighter and EMT for a few years now. In my first year, my partner and I got dispatched to a fall. 2 kids, fresh out of high school, were out hiking and decided to climb a rock face. One of them fell and was impaled by the stump of a tree. I remember getting to where he was, and his whole body was trembling uncontrollably. I went to work trying to stop the bleeding, as a pool of blood had already formed around the stump, while my partner called dispatch to get a helicopter. This kid looked at me and stuttered out, "Am I gonna die?" I told him I was doing everything I could and I needed him to keep talking. He didn't say anything for about 30 seconds after that. When he finally did say something, it was, "I don't want to die." This kid was within a year or two of my age, and he was depending on me and my partner to keep him alive. That was a moment where I wondered what the hell I was doing in this profession, and if this was something I could continue doing. The kid didn't make it. The helicopter wasn't available, and even if it was, he would have bled out before it arrived. I ended up in counseling from that call. I'm still here, doing the same job, and I still love it. Before we move on to the next story, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever experienced something similar? If so, please share your experience in the comments section. I read all your comments and try to reply to everyone. Additionally, I will feature some of your experiences in my next videos. Story 3. The Basement Intruder. Until I moved out last Friday for unrelated reasons, I was living in a basement apartment beneath a TV repair shop. My apartment was connected by a single door to the basement, which was down the stairs from the shop itself. The door opens inward toward my apartment and is secured with a chain lock. It's dark and spooky in there, completely empty other than some wood scraps and a water heater. There are no windows, and the only ways in are my door and a trapdoor up the stairs to the shop. Last week, I was in my living room one night when I heard a loud bang. I looked over, and the door to the other basement was open, held in place only by a chain lock. There's no lock on the handle, nor is there a deadbolt. The door had been closed and secured before, and it doesn't open without the knob being turned. I assumed someone was trying to break in and had kicked the door open. I called 911 to report that my house was being broken into. I noted to the dispatcher that I hadn't heard a sound after the door opened. A few minutes later, 3 cops arrived. I brought them downstairs and showed them the door. They tactically entered the other basement, looking all badass with their guns drawn and flashlights out. One of the cops attempted to go up the stairs, but was unable to open the trapdoor to the shop, setting off an alarm in the process. They told me there was no one in there, and no way anybody could have been in there. The upstairs door was jammed. If someone had opened it, they would have set off the burglar alarm, and apparently it was covered in undisturbed cobwebs. He said, "Man, I totally believe you, and I don't think you're crazy, but you better call the Ghostbusters or something because this is beyond us." After he left, I noticed that the door handle was loose and a big chunk of wood was missing around the tongue of my apartment's side of the door. Scary as hell. Honestly, I never believed in ghosts, but this freaked me out big time, and I can't figure out an explanation. Luckily, I moved out 2 days later. Someone tell me what the hell happened, please. Before we move on to the next story, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever experienced something similar? If so, please share your experience in the comments section. I read all your comments and try to reply to everyone. Additionally, I will feature some of your experiences in my next videos. Story 4. The Drunken Psychic. When I was working at a trauma center, I saw all sorts of unexplainable things. One of the most memorable involved a lady who came in passed out drunk and unresponsive. A typical case. We got her into a bed, did vitals, and all the usual things until she could wake up and answer questions. Part of the intake vitals for an alcohol case is to do an EKG to rule out any signs that the behavior could be heart-related. It was just her and me in the room with the door open. Suddenly, she sat up straight, looked me dead in the eyes, and said clearly, "You're thinking about quitting." I was, because I was unhappy with my job and considering leaving the medical field. I told her so because, why not? She said, "You can't quit. People need people like you. I need people like you. You understand things." Then she immediately fell back into the bed, back to her original state. She didn't become responsive until several hours later, and she didn't even remember coming to the hospital. Maybe not necessarily paranormal, but I still look back on that moment and can't help but feel a spark of something that was more than normal, divine perhaps. I don't know. I always refer to her as the drunken psychic when I tell this story. If you find these stories chilling, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more gripping tales. Share your story in the comments below. I love to hear your experiences. Stay safe, and thanks for watching.